The lost village in the remote countryside of England, nestled deep within an ancient forest, lay the ruins of a village that had long been forgotten. The village of Ashford was said to have vanished overnight over a century ago, leaving behind only crumbling stone walls and overgrown paths. Locals avoided the area, claiming it was cursed, but that didn't deter Clara and Ben, two adventurous historians who were determined to uncover its secrets. One crisp autumn morning, Clara and Ben set out for the forest, armed with maps, flashlights, and a sense of curiosity. They had spent months researching Ashford, piecing together old records and folklore. According to their findings, the village had disappeared in the fall of 1883, and none who entered its boundaries were ever seen again. The forest was dense and foreboding, the trees towering above them like silent sentinels. As they ventured deeper, the light dimmed, and an eerie silence enveloped them. The air grew cold, and a sense of unease settled over the pair. Undeterred, they pressed on until they stumbled upon a narrow, overgrown path that matched the one on their map. "This must be it," Ben said, his voice tinged with excitement. "We're close," Clara nodded, though she couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. They followed the path until they reached a clearing where the ruins of Ashford lay. The remnants of stone cottages and a small church stood silently, covered in ivy and moss. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay. "Look at this place," Clara whispered. It's like time stood still. They began to explore, taking photos and notes. As they examined the ruins, they found strange symbols carved into the stone symbols that didn't match any known language or alphabet. The deeper they ventured into the village, the more uneasy Clara felt. She noticed that there were no signs of wildlife, no birds sang, and no insects buzzed. It was as if the village existed in a void, cut off from the natural world. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the ruins, they decided to set up camp in what remained of the village square. They built a small fire and sat close, the flickering flames providing a semblance of warmth and comfort. "What do you think happened here?" Clara asked, her eyes scanning the darkening forest. Ben shrugged. "Hard to say. The records are vague, but there are tales of a strange illness that swept through the village. Some say it was a punishment from the gods." They sat in silence for a while, the fire crackling softly. Just as they were about to retire to their tents, they heard a rustling sound from the edge of the clearing. Clara shone her flashlight in the direction of the noise, but saw nothing. "Probably just the wind," Ben said, though his voice lacked conviction. As they settled into their tents, Clara couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. She lay awake, listening to the sounds of the forest, or rather, the lack thereof. The silence was oppressive, suffocating. Just as she was drifting off to sleep, she heard it again, the rustling, closer this time. She sat up and unzipped her tent, peering out into the darkness. The fire had died down, casting eerie shadows across the ruins. Suddenly, a figure stepped into the clearing. It was a woman, her clothes tattered and covered in dirt. Her eyes were wide with fear, and her skin was pale as death. Clara's heart pounded in her chest as she watched the woman approach. She wanted to call out to Ben, but her voice caught in her throat. The woman stopped at the edge of the firelight, her eyes pleading. "Help us," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "They're coming." Before Clara could respond, the woman vanished into the shadows. She scrambled out of her tent and ran to Ben's, shaking him awake. "Ben, wake up. There's someone here." Ben gradually sat up, rubbing his eyes. "What are you talking about?" Clara explained what she had seen, and though skeptical, Ben agreed to investigate. They grabbed their flashlights and followed the path the woman had taken, their breaths visible in the cold night air. As they ventured deeper into the forest, the trees seemed to close in around them. The temperature dropped, and a thick fog began to roll in. The sense of dread intensified with each step. Suddenly, they heard a low, guttural growl behind them. They spun around, shining their flashlights into the fog, but saw nothing. "We need to get out of here," Ben said, his voice trembling. Now, they turned to leave, but the path they had come from was gone, swallowed by the fog. Panic set in as they realized they were lost. The growling grew louder, closer. Clara felt a cold breath on the back of her neck and turned to see a pair of glowing eyes staring at her from the darkness. She screamed and ran, Ben close on her heels. They stumbled through the fog, branches scratching at their faces and arms. The growling followed them, relentless.